Please, please.
الفاتحة. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. All right. Let me see if I can get my screen share thing going up.
Okay.
Host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you make me a co-host, please?
All right. Moving to that now. Done.
There we go. Now we got something cooking. All right. Here we go. All right. Very good. Okay. So now let's see if I can move these boxes which are in the way. Oh well. Let's see. Um, okay, so Latif, what we're doing right now is we're really on the precipice of moving into chapter 7, which has got some of the more challenging and less sweet names in the list. But meanwhile, we didn't finish last week with Latif, which is probably the sweetest name of all the names in the lists. Hassan, is it possible for you to move the photo boxes somewhere like to the far left?
Uh,
I can't read the type.
that's a good question.
The boxes are in the way, but I'll
You
do
hit
my best.
you
But see
hit
if
the
you can.
hit that little line up in the right hand corner. Hit the one line
The one line.
in the
Okay.
right corner.
How about this? Is that helpful? Not helpful?
Not yet, but I'll make it. So the
Is that
quick,
worse?
the quick, simple, easy gloss that Wali Ali Mayer and Imam Bilal Hyde and Faisal Muqaddam and Shabda Khan give for Latif is subtle love. So although when we get to chapter 7, we're going to move into the more complicated and advanced and nuanced and intensive names, this is probably the sweetest of all the names in the list. Subtle love, the shearing of silk. It says on here that Latufa is a form of the root. And of course, that's the case with all the words, that all the words are forms of roots. But we'll be getting back into that as we continue along. Mild and soothing is given as some of this. Manners in terms of adab is given for this. And the image of tanning, of soaking leather in what turns out to be urine to soften it up, is also given as a meaning of latifa in a kind of an earth plane sense of latifa. Latifa also would mean like emollient, like something that softens the skin. And latif is often paired with khabir, or the depth of mystical insight. So that's kind of appropriate and interesting for our time. The story of Khuzru and Moses shows up here because although Khuzru is kind of bold and coarse, the lessons that he's teaching are very subtle and gentle. So we'll be getting into that when we go into chapter 17, as the text says. All right. So we've got Latif It means to caress, to pet, to rock, to shake gently, as one might fondle a child's head. All right, so that's some of the basics of Latif. All right, and they mention here that in the story of Khuzru, the gift that Khuzru imparts to Moses is the gift of ta'wil. This is on, I don't know what page this is on. Um, I'm using a screensaver, a screen
100,
sharer.
page 100.
Thank you. Page 100 talks about the gift of ta'wil, which ta'wil can mean a lot of things. It can mean dream interpretation in the story of Joseph. In the story of Joseph is dream interpretation. In the story of the interpretation of the Quran, it means esoteric interpretation. So it has a variety of meanings. And so this is one of the meanings in the story of Khuzru and Moses, that ta'wil is the inner insight, the original fundamental understanding of all things. So the refinement of character, moisturizing and glossening. He mentions the plural of latif, which is lataif, and lataif are kind of like chakras. Lataif are subtle centers in the subtle body, and they include the heart and the secret of the secret and the most outstanding of the secrets. And he gives an example of an oil lamp being lit and the perfume comes off, and that perfume that comes off of it is an example of latif. So this is more than just love. It's a refined quality of empathy. The intimacy of being able to get into the latif of another person. So that's an aspect of latif too, is being able to dig inside of somebody and understand their essence is latif. Latif is, latif means subtle. Latif means gentle. And I think as a kind of love, it's well explained as a kind of love in that way. And the nefs becomes more refined. So a very important point that our aim is not to kill the ego, but rather to allow for its transformation. And there's the physical example of the cervix of the mother is effaced, not annihilated. So it's really not about, nafs al-amara is not something that's supposed to be annihilated. It's supposed to be transformed. It's supposed to be tamed. And on this page that I'm on, which is Kindle location 2697.
101.
Thank you, 101. Very nice. Thank you very much, Katie. Nafsa Safiya. Nafsa Safiya is the highest level of the nafs, is the purified soul. And this is what we're all seeking for, is this purified soul. Trying to read. When Moses, in the Kabbalah story, Moses, I guess it's on page 101 too, that Moses in the Kabbalah story, when he sees the burning bush, he's so aglow that the people can't stand it. So he puts a mask over him to dull the intensity of the light. So the transformation of the nefs is really the key. And they recommend reciting Latif and Khabir together in a pair, since they are a pair of opposites, which is something we're going to get into in the next chapter, which is that the value and the role of all the opposites. So here's a brief summary of the opposites that are going to be taken up in this chapter. Mu'iz, which means the one who honors. Mudil, who means the ones who debases. Malaccal Mulk, the possessor of the domain. Mumit and Muhai. Mumit is the one who causes death, and Muhi is the one who causes life. Hai is life, which includes both life and death. Muntakim and Afu are opposites. Muntakim is the has often been translated as the Avenger, but we're going to get inside that a little bit deeper and see some other meanings to Muntakim. And Afu is the ever forgiving one, the pardoning one. And they pair that up with Adil, which is justice, and Aziz, which is greatness. And then Dar and Nafi. Dar is harmful, like what the Pharaoh, what God did to the Pharaoh's firstborn children. That's Dar. And Nafia is benefit, the opposite of Dar. And then Malaccal Mulk comes up again in this trinity of names. So Allah's opposite qualities. And Mavlana Jalaluddin Rumi said that the secret of Allah is found between the opposites. So we have the first set of three names of God: Ya Mu'iz, Ya Mudil, Ya Malik al Mulk. So Mu'iz is the honorer or the strengthener, and Mudil is the dishonorer or weakener. God is the only source of being raised up in honor and the only source of being brought down in shame. So the play of honor and dishonor and praise and blame. Are you honored or dishonored by others? How is your life colored? In constant concern about how people perceive you. So this is part of a way of getting out from beyond being stuck in how people perceive you. Mudil derives from to seek or to yearn for the object of a long cherished wish. I wish I could move these boxes so I can read the type. Where is this line that I'm looking for? Let me try this. There we go. Okay, we got it. Thank you, Rahieh. So to yearn for the object of a long cherished wish. In other words, Al-Mudhil is the divine power that gives you a real desire and yearning to face your lower self, to bow low, and to fully engage with the lowest regions of the self. Al-Mudhil brings you to your knees with your head on the ground. This is the outer form of sajda. Sajda means prostration. So Mudhil is the outer form of sajda, of prostration. It means to bow down as in prayer. You go low, you surrender. To help you realize that how you are perceived is irrelevant, we recommend the prayerful recitation of the opposites, Ya Mudhil, Ya Mu'iz. And then also Ya Aziz, which is, Ya Aziz is related to Ya Mudhil. To Ya Mu'iz. Ya Mu'iz is a form of Aziz. Aziz is a form of Mu'iz. So they both mean honoring and greatness, right? And then to round it out, we have Ya Malik al Mulk. Malik al Mulk, rounding that out together. Okay. So the section on further psychological considerations.
That's Talat.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I would just indulge me, please. Could we just do a few wazifas?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I was digging that Malacca Mook and its pair. Let's maybe do 33 of a pair and then go forward. So
All
we
right,
can,
let's do 33 Malaccal Mulk. Ya Malaccal Mulk, Ya Malaccal Mulk, okay?
yeah.
Ya Malik al Mulk, 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 Ya Malik al Mulk. So this Malik al Mulk, which helps to balance out the Muazzin and the Mudhil, the honorer and the dishonorer. So in the further psychological considerations, al Mudhil is usually experienced in our psyches as the humiliator. So it's connected to the shame in our personality structure. And then Dalil is a form of the same root, which means humiliation in terms of a psychological dimension.
Uh,
Yeah,
I just want to give you an anecdote. When I was teaching names, someone made this so memorable. It's not the Arabic pronunciation, but she said, Yamudil, you're in a mud hill. That's exactly what humiliation is.
excellent, Paula. Thank you. That's awesome. In the mud hill. Yes, very good. Dalil Mud Hill. Thanks, Paula. That was good. All right. A little bit of levity is a good thing, right? So these are the further psychological considerations of these names. And Malik al Mulk has the implication of being held in the hands of God. So I'll just leave that at that for now. Okay, so Yamumit, Yamuhi, Yahai. And these words are all in shapes, structures, patterns, forms that suggest that they are causatives. They're the ones who cause certain things to happen. The active participle in grammar. Yamumit, Yamuhi, Yahai. So Mu'mid is the one who causes death, and Muhi is the one who brings about life. And these are obviously, again, a pair of opposites following what Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi said about that. The sound code, in the second paragraph, it says at the end that the sound code shows that Al-Muhi and Mu'mid are causatives, the one who causes life and the one who causes death, right? So this sound code term is a term that I call structures and patterns and forms. Okay, that's the sound code. That's in chapter 2 of the book. And as we go through this and I keep telling you about roots and structures, this will become clearer and clearer, and you'll be able to more easily read chapter 2 of the book and make sense of it. So death is said to be a temporary state in the same way that we think of life as a temporary state. And then we look at the two names, and Muhi is related to Hayawan, which means animal soul, the Nefs al-Amara, the soul of the animal. So what is this here? Pairing the two names in repetition can be highly beneficial for those who feel that they have lost their vitality or who are so depressed that they want to die. Even in this kind of depressed condition, Instead of saying Ya Muhi alone, we recommend calling out Ya Muhi Ya Mu'mit, as this lends stability and balance. For a very extreme condition, it may be appropriate to recite only the single name that is the antidote. However, when the emergency passes, there should be a second stage of practice where this person is asked to balance their two urges in invoking Ya Mu'mit Ya Muhi. You know, this is the only book of its kind that really delves into the question of patterns and pairings and clusters of names. None of the other books seem to do that very much. And so pairing the names is a very helpful practice. On the next page, it talks about your grief brought to an inner balance. And further down, it talks about die before you die. Is really about the spiritual death and rebirth, the fana and the baqa. Al-Mu'mid is the cause of anything that ends or passes away. So everything passes away and everything ends, and Al-Mu'mid is the cause of that. And Al-Mu'mid is drawing the lover toward the beloved stage by stage, since as we come into our death, we become closer to God in that way. Also describing Fana and Baqa, near the end of this section on Mu'min and Muhi, is Ba'ith and Warith, describe in another way the same process of Fana and Baqa. Ba'ith means to send forth. It can also mean to resurrect. And Warith means the inheritor. So we can say that all human beings can be described as renters. Through death, God is the sole possessor or inheritor of what we truly have. That is what remains. That is part of the meaning of Al-Ba'ith and Al-Warith. They are fully discussed in chapter 21. Inshallah, we'll get to chapter 21. Dying to the false idea of self and actualizing the knowledge of unity. We suggest that as a way to fully open to the process of inner transformation expressed by Fana and Baqa, it may be fruitful to contemplate these four divine names together: Ya Mumit, Ya Muhi, Ya Warith, Ya Ba'ith. Okay. The one who brings death, the one who brings life, the one who inherits everything, the one who sends forth. Okay. Now we get into some very interesting material, because we have in the next set of names Ya Muntakim, Ya Muntakim, Ya Adil, Ya Afu, Ya Aziz. Ya Muntakim frequently gets translated as being the avenger or the vengeance or the revenger, but we're going to look into some different meanings of that are in this particular book. Ya Adil is the just one, Ya Afu is the all-forgiving one, and Ya Aziz is the magnificent and mighty one. So how do you like the description of God as the one who takes revenge? We felt uncomfortable with that simple gloss of the divine names. Thus began for us a most interesting exploration. And the root of the word muntakim in Arabic is nakam, which means to take revenge on somebody. The sound code tells us, in other words, the structure of the word, the pattern of the word, tells us that muntakim is both reflexive and reciprocal. In other words, muntakim goes both ways, goes from God to human being and from human being to God. This is an important complication that needs to be considered, and we will deal with it in a moment. There's an initial problem that should be faced first. The most puzzling part about a divine name with this root meaning of revenge is that even from a strictly legal point of view, taking vengeance or revenge on anyone is prohibited. In virtually all ethical and moral codes, including the Islamic Sharia, people are taught to avoid revenge. So vengeance is lack of compassion. It is justice without compassion. And that's what's involved there. But as it's going to go on and say, is Muntakim is really about balancing the vengeance and balancing the compassion. In the conventional view, al-Muntakim has come to mean revenge. Human beings have a tendency to settle scores. Vengeance is an attempt to achieve a kind of balance, but an attempt that is without compassion. However, it is impossible to imagine that there can be a divine quality that is essentially absent of compassion. So we contend that this interpretation of the meaning of al-Muntakim as vengeance cannot be correct. It must have another meaning. Everyone understands vengeance quite well in everyday language. So let me just see if where we get to. So this so-called vengeance is, as it says at the top of this page, a remedy for you when you become trapped in a cycle of vengeance in your heart. It presents an avenue of change, a way that recognize that Allah is the only one who understands how to maintain a balance with compassion for all. And then they repeat that Muntakim is reciprocal. That means it goes both ways, from God to man and man to God. So on deeper reflection, we recognize there's a human feeling in us that wants revenge on God. We are mad at God. We feel wounded and disconnected. And this is some of the material that was in the first psychological form in the previous chapter. I'm smoking a lot because I'm mad at God. I don't meditate because I'm mad at God. If the light and the blessings come, I go and spoil it because I'm mad at God, but it is also reciprocated. So, objectively speaking, as human beings, we go through pain. Sometimes we go through joy, but often it is through pain. So, to balance out al-Muntakim, we have at the bottom of the right-hand page, al-Afu and Ya'adl. Ya'afu, the forgiving one, and Ya'adl, the source of justice, justice itself. So what he's suggesting is at the bottom of this page, location 2913, al-Muntakim is the balancer. That's the way to understand what this is meant by revenge, as the balancer, al-Muntakim, the balancer. That, as he says on the next page, it's a dramatic correcting force. And he says al-Muntakim always appears next to al-Afu, perfect forgiveness, in the list of the 99 beautiful names. We've seen them paired in the Quran. As with other opposite pairs, it is significant that al-Muntakim and al-Afu occur together. By looking at both names in a single verse or a cluster of verses, we can usually get a sense of how they interact with each other. So these two names are also contrasted in the thesaurus. Al-Muntakim, unforgiving. Al-Afu, forgiving. And in chapter 8, we're going to explore Al-Afu a little more. That will be the next chapter that we'll get to. We'll see if we can get through this chapter today. I'm planning to close up shop at about 5 to 8 so that I can watch the presidential debates and watch the microphones turned off. We might look upon all the names at the bottom of the page of Allah as a great pharmacopoeia. It might just be that a divine name that brings along with it such negative association needs to be part of a homeopathic treatment. The root meaning for Muntakim includes to find fault, to dislike, to disapprove, but it also has the more positive meanings of the center of the road, to be strong, and to be steady, and to be a reliable guide. Hang on one second, I'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. I just thought I'd get into for a minute this yes, so the root for nakama, to revenge, to take avenge of, to revenge, to take vengeance. This is from a standard Arabic dictionary. To be hostile, to be full of rancor, vindictiveness, etc. And then it goes on to say, in the form, which is called Form 8, which is where that T from muntakam comes from. To revenge, to avenge someone, to take revenge, to take vengeance on. So, and we have words like intiqam, which mean revenge and vengeance, and intiqami, revenge and reprisal in compounds. So we see all these words have the same roots. The N, Q, M root is in all these words, but because of their slightly different shapes, they get just slightly different meanings from that. So muntaka means to find fault, to dislike or disapprove, but it also has the more positive meanings of the center of the road, to be strong, to be steady, and to be a reliable guide. And then complementing these names, Aziz. Aziz means powerful, and it also means rare, precious, and highly valued. Like you write somebody a letter and you say, Ya Hassan Aziz. Or you write, Ya Paula Ya Azizati. So Aziz can also mean precious, not just powerful, and highly valued. The divine name Ya Aziz is both strong and rare. An eagle is Aziza. Uzeza means a young eaglet, which is a rare phenomenon in nature. So we are suggesting the proper way to call on Ya Muntakim is as a vehicle to change your consciousness away from seeing God as a vengeful God. So that Al Muntakim is the reliable guide to that balance and equity. All right, let's see what we have here now for a homeopathic approach to our impulse for revenge. So we have Afu, the forgiving or the pardoning, the true opposite of El Muntakim. So that's how to pair Muntakim is with Afu. One of the severe imbalances of the human system has to do with a certain kind of love. It is called ishq. The wine that runs in the blood is called ishq. It is a pomegranate-like essence. When this ishq, which is the most ecstatic and passionate of all the loves, is frustrated, it creates imbalance in the system. It is as if the blood itself gets poisoned, and then the mind cannot think clearly, the heart cannot feel clearly, and the body gets sick and weak from all of this. With any form of rejection by your partner, no matter how small, you tend to go right to revenge. You want to be the muntakim. You are seeking el muntakim at the level of your passion, where it is felt as revenge and anger and frustration. So the pomegranate opens and you create a sense of harmony and balance, and everything is running in perfect rhythm and harmony. And so these are names like Muntakim, are Jalali names. It's on the right-hand page of the page that I'm looking at with the Jalali names of God. One thing to remember about the Jalali names of God is that focusing on power can be a very seductive activity. You really need to be alert to where you can get stuck in misunderstanding. We saw this quite dramatically in our earlier discussion of El Muntakim. Right? So at the bottom of the page it says one thing to reemphasize from the sound code, what I call the patterns or the structures or the forms, is that the eighth grammatical form, which is the number of the form, of which El Muntakim is a member, is reciprocal. The te, the letter T in that word, makes it reciprocal. That letter T in the word is not part of the root. That letter T in the word is part of the structure of the word, and it makes it interactive. So there's a physical metaphor for afu, which is that the wind completely erases the footprints that have been made in the desert stand, and that to forgive is a type of fana. Similar to afu, we have tauba, repentance, which is related to afu, complete forgiveness, and this is related to istighfar, as in astaghfirullah, tubtu ilallah, wa nahaytu qalbi an ma siwallah, astaghfirullah. The ghafara root is the root for forgiveness, and the structure with all the other letters in it is a 10th form structure that means seeking or desiring something. I'm seeking the ghafara. I'm seeking the forgiveness of God. So the domain of the afu is much more refined than the domain of the muntakim. Al-afu is dealing with emotional hurt, wounds of the heart, while al-muntakim is dealing with primal instincts. And then al-adl comes in to unite the two, to provide a union of the opposites. This is not just the act of balancing some negative qualities and some positive qualities. It is balancing the most negative and the most positive. Al-adl is related to al-mizan. Mizan means the scales, the balance. The Quran says the whole universe is set up in accordance with the manifestation of al-adl, or else it would fall apart immediately. The Quran says that the world is set up on the mizan in chapter 55, the Surah Rahman, about the mizan. Everything is set up on the mizan. Repetition of ya'adl, which in itself is the essence of balance, can be used as a corrective. It is a constant harmonizing function which all can recognize. And then when we get to chapter 17, we'll be talking about the nafs al-amara and the 7 levels of the nafs, from the nafs al-amara to the nafs al-lawama to the nafs al-ilham to the nafs al-mutma'ina to the nafs al-radiya to the nafs al-mardiya to the nafs al-safiya, also called the nafs al-zakiya. That comes to chapter 17, a few chapters away in a bit. The mention of the name al-wasiya is given here because of the famous hadith that the heavens and the earth do not contain me, but the heart of my lover contains me. And that being contained is wasiya, is containing. In the throne verse it says, wasiya kursiyuhu samawati wal ard. His throne extends over the heavens and the earth. It wasiyas, it extends. All right. All right. Then we have Dar and Nafi, which are an interesting pair because they are opposites. Dar means something like the harmful one, and Nafi means the one who gives benefit. Both of these words are in shapes that mean that they are the unique or the only one who does whatever the quality is that the form implants into the structure, being inherent and natural. Anafia means to profit, to benefit, to take advantage of, to make use of for good purpose. Nafa'a is the root. It means to both use and benefit from. It means to use a remedy for a good purpose, namely to cure a disease. There is a specific sense in anafia of purification from a disease using water. We can think of all the ways we use water in purification on bodies, clothes, and food, and so forth. This specific sense of how anafia embodies purification should be incorporated into our use of it in the pharmacopoeia. Adar gives us more specifics about disease. Adar's primary meaning, my internet connection is unstable. So taken together, we have, quote, the only source of benefit, quote, for Nafia, and, quote, the only source of harm for Dar, and so on. To fully go through the process of recognizing God in both these aspects is priceless from a theological perspective. God is the only source of both. It forces one into acknowledging La ilaha illallah, unity alone exists. Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi has said that the secret of discovering the essence of Allah is in the divine names. Right? So between these two names, we see that there is no other agent but Allah. And they recommend reciting Ya Dar and Ya Nafi together for balance and to lead to this unitive realization of La ilaha illallah. Yeah.
I showed something to an Egyptian friend of mine, and in the name flow I did Yadar separately and then Yanafi separately, and she didn't like that. She said she never uses the name Nadar alone. She said Yadar Yanafi or Al Dar Al Nafi. She never ever says Dar separately.
Yeah, and I think that they say that in the book too. In Physicians of the Heart, I think they say not to use Dar alone.
The practice, you mean? Or
yeah.
Yeah.
To combine them with Dar and Nafi, because then you get the balance. A lot of this book is about balancing the names. So that's good. I'm glad your Egyptian friend spoke up. That's good. Right.
I'll tell you, I don't know if you're interested because I know we're going at a breakneck speed, but I happened, when I was working on this, I got a transcript of the conversation that got into this chapter that we've just been reading. It is so different from the finished product. It's remarkable.
Really?
Yes, it really makes you appreciate what Wali Ali did. And I can read you a little bit, but you won't even recognize it.
Interesting. I'd love to read it. Yeah, I'd love to hear it. But we got about 20 minutes left for today. So I'm going to pursue this, and I'll bug you up for the original version, the original take. So they bring up a related word to Dara, which is Darir, which means to become blind, to lose one's sight. And then bring up the story of Job, who was blinded in the trials that he endured from God, who God was being in his role as Dar when he afflicted Job with those trials. We can see now how Yadar could be invoked to refine our nafs for a specific purpose. The Quran talks about events that occur in what is called the unseen world. When you recite the divine names, one of the things that happens is that time and space are very, very different. The whole world is a cosmic display of divine names, manifestations of the beautiful names, Everywhere you look is an aspect of Allah. Everywhere you turn is the face of God. Questions about when and where fade in importance. Reciting this pair of opposites, Ya Dar, Ya Nafi, may provide a deep healing for episodes of victimization. It allows you to come to understand how cause and effect operate in your life. A little further down, the blindness, darir, in the heart is the blindness of holding on to the little self. So it's egotistical blindness. Again, about victimization. So a nafs al-amara and durura is a form of dar, carry the meaning of to compel. It is the nafs that compels, especially the nafs al-amara, the lower nafs, is the one that compels. If you call on Yadar with Yanafi, you surrender the nafs piece by piece and become more able to go with the divine flow. You can go where Adar takes you because you know it is going to take you to a patient, refined place. It is fana, the place of self-effacement. It comes with a kind of poverty. It is where the ego dissolves. That is where Adar is taking us. And then there's a list here on the page right before the next section with Quranic verses that use both a Dar and a Nafiya together in the same verses, and points out that in every one of those verses, Al-Malik or Malaccal Mulk also appears in those places. Ya Malik al-Mulk offers the non-dualistic connection of these two extremes. All right. And then we have Qabid, Basit, and Wasiya. Okay. So one more pair of opposites. For a more complete treatment of Qabid and Basit and Wasiya, see chapter 12, The Secret of Ecstasy. Al-Qabid is contraction. The opposite of al-basit is expansion. Al-qabid, al-basit. I think they come together in the sequence. At the physical level, everyone can observe the continual contraction and expansion of the heart and the lungs. Human beings have a wider sphere of heart that expands and contracts on a larger scale. You feel high and then you come down. Such fluctuations of states within the greater sphere of heart are called ahwal. This is sometimes expressed by saying one enters into a hal, which is a form of ahwal that is often used in Sufi circles. Ahwal is the plural and hal is the singular. Make that kind of simple and easy. So repetition of Yaqabid and Yabasid as a pair will bring you to equanimity about this transient process and point you to the transcendent reality that includes both expansion and contraction. This allows you to move toward balance and begin to surrender your attachment and aversion to the expanded and contracted states. Al-Wasiya is the name of that transcendent reality. It is a maqam, an established station of realization that is not subject to the fluctuations of states. The Quranic verse says that the mercy, rahmah, of Allah is so wide, wasi'ah, it includes everything. Wasi'ah kursiyuhu samawati wal ard. God's throne extends over the whole universe. It is so wide, it includes its opposite. That kind of capacity is not susceptible to contraction and expansion. It is an infinite embrace of all conditions. A full experience of ahwal will take you to that reality. Being infinite, it transcends expansion and contraction, and yet it also embraces those apparent opposites. It is important to contemplate Yaqabid and Yabasit as a pair. Then you can invoke the transcendent name Yawasiya. Each time we have become engaged with a pair of divine opposites, we have been led toward transcendence and unity. There appears to be a built-in process that continues to lead us toward a realization of essence. This approach is an important gift and a resource to call on when seeking to understand all the divine names. So that's great. We did it we did chapter 7. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, Yakabit, Yabasit. Do you, when you pair them, do you do them in a pair like 11, 33, and then do Yawasi for 33 like that, or how would you suggest?
I think you do them all in sequence.
Okay, all three.
Yakabit, Yabasit, Yawasia.
Okay,
But you have the choice of just doing Kabit and Basit, and you have the choice alternatively of doing all three.
nice. Got it. Thank you.
And they come together in sequence in the list too.
Yeah.
I remember Wali Ali at a retreat once saying, you know, you don't like contraction, you want expansion, 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 but you couldn't drive home safely from this retreat unless you contracted. So you better make friends with both sides.
Exactly. Yep. Your heart needs both contraction and withdrawal in order to function. Contraction and expansion are both necessary. I had a student ask about that too, like, what's with Kabit, you know? And I said, lots of people like contraction. They go on diets to contract.
Yeah, the heart will not beat without contraction.
Exactly. Thank you, Shamsuddin. So we are we have an exciting chapter coming up next, which is words like Ghafar, the forgiver, Ghafur, the forgiver, Tawab, the source of repentance, Ya'afu, the forgiver. So these should be really quite enriching to your spiritual life.
Nice. Well, it is 7:40 now. Yeah, you would you like to close now, or would you like to go on?
Let's close now,
Okay.
so people can make their transition to this
Okay.
presidential debate.
All right. Turn off your screen share, and we can see everybody at that point. So next time is chapter 8.
Chapter 8.
Chapter 8. The forgiveness chapter. Should be exciting.
Hamza has turned blue.
All right. It's computer blue. So, Talat, lead us in Khatum, and we'll say
Khatum.
see you in 2 weeks.
O thou who art the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the Lord of heaven and earth, open our hearts that we may hear thy voice, which constantly comes from within. Disclose to us thy divine light, which is hidden in our souls, that we may know and understand life better. Most merciful and compassionate God, give us thy great goodness, teach us thy loving forgiveness, raise us above the distinctions and differences which divide, Send us the peace of thy divine Spirit, and unite us all in thy perfect being. Amen. All right, who? Thank you, Hassan Ravenwolf. Who?
Everybody keep your prayers going for this debate.
Thank you,
Yes,
Talat.
indeed.
Thank you, Talat.
Thank you.
It's not going to be a debate.
Okay. This
All right,
debacle,
everybody. I'll see you later. We're going to let
All
everybody
right.
go to there. I'm going to see you in 2 weeks. Love you.
Love you. Oh, oh, oh.
Ooh, ending the meeting. Love to all.